Oh, man, day before Thanksgiving, Charlotte Health and Neurology is going to be closed for 2 days this week. That means 4 days off.
4 days
What
off.
will we do with all that time? What will we do?
That's the question.
What will we do? What are you going to do, Dr. Charlotte, with 4 days off?
Well, I'm trying to convince my wife to go somewhere in our RV, even if it's just for the day. We were listening to NPR this morning, and apparently RV sales just exploded this year, right? And so
I love that.
we actually updated our 10-year-old RV to a new old RV back in about early March. We caught it just before the COVID wave, so we got really lucky because I think its inventory has been extremely low.
Wow.
But now they're anticipating, so if you think you might like to RV in the future, the future predictors are saying there's going to be a huge used RV market in about a year or two. So
that makes sense.
Hold
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, people who thought they wanted... We love our RV, so don't get me wrong. But people who thought that they would want to RV are going for it this year, and then they're like, yeah, maybe it wasn't so great after all.
I bet it's
Right.
more work than people think.
You know, the biggest piece of advice I could give folks, and I hear this over and over again, and I heard it on NPR this morning, and my father-in-law kind of introduced us, my mother and father-in-law, but they said, it's a dollhouse. Just always remember it's a dollhouse.
Oh, okay.
And so it's delicate, it breaks, we've had some very, this, like I said, this is our second RV going back to about 2007, and we've had some comical / expensive little oopses over the years. Maybe one of the best ones was near Louisville, Kentucky, and we had a second car with us that we drove, and so I think I was in the car behind the RV. My son and my wife were in the RV. We were trying to get to this campground, and the GPS took us in a particular way that apparently is not the best way to get to this campground. Well, there was a stone bridge, and you had to go under the bridge. And they had paved the road so many times that even though it had a certain height, it was actually, the bridge was lower, or the road was higher, depending on how you looked at it. So Gabe and Valerie were in the RV, and they stopped, and they looked, and they were like, and then I hear sort of the engine gun, and they go for it, and I watch the air conditioning unit peel off the top of this RV, like opening, it was like opening a can of tuna or something like that. So, and let me tell you, there's a big business for these guys that have these mobile units, and they come and they repair your RV. And we pull into this campground. We said, well, we're so glad to be here, but we have no AC, and it's the middle of the summer. And he's like, oh, yeah, everybody does that. So,
really?
Like $1,500 later, we had, and about a day later, we had our new AC unit. So, yeah, that was probably one of our biggest oopses, but, you learn. We haven't had any, knock on wood, haven't had any oopses so far with our new old RV.
So fingers crossed after the 4-day weekend, you'll be
good.
back on Monday.
Yeah.
Right, fingers crossed.
Right,
okay.
right.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. What are you guys doing for these holidays? Any special plans?
You know what? Total introvert holiday. I'm staying home and watching Schitt's Creek and eating pizza. So, but it's pizza with lots of veggies because I'm thinking about all the wonderful things that I can put on my veggies.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, the dietitian's table? What's going on for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving?
Well, so we are having immediate family. We've scaled down this year quite a bit, but I really believe, I'm a believer in the food that you eat at Thanksgiving not only is delicious food, but it also carries so much memories and so much, it's so important for our mental health right now. Grandma made this, and I remember I helped her when I was 7, and those kinds of things. So I don't want you to skip those things. We definitely can make things a little bit healthier, less, and I'm always, even on the holidays, believe in less processed food, and so less food that comes in a can, or less food that has lots of ingredients and that kind of thing. So anything that you can do a little bit more scratchy is probably better. But don't forget to add the things. We're all about increasing or adding, having sufficiency dieting even on Thanksgiving. So thinking about the things that you can add to the meal that increase, and I think of vegetables. Traditionally our Thanksgivings tend to be very starchy and very carby and very gravy and things like that. And we forget maybe just to add something green to the table.
It's kind of like that cornucopia image with all the veggies.
Oh, now there you go.
Right?
Right. Because that was Thanksgiving, right? That's what the original Thanksgiving, it wasn't just mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, dressing, and turkey. There was also lots and lots of colors in it. And so when you're looking or thinking about your menu, thinking about the colors, maybe that'll help you get a little more diversity and a little more nutrition in that meal.
Well, and it's funny too, because when I started bringing Brussels sprouts, because when we do have Thanksgiving with my in-laws, I would always bring roasted Brussels sprouts. And it's nothing that anybody ever did before, but you bring them and people are like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Why do I never make Brussels sprouts?
Right.
I love Brussels sprouts.
Right.
And so it's a really good opportunity to be that person that brings it, and then you'll be surprised how many people are like, oh, this is a great idea. Why haven't I done this before?
I love that. And kind of creating some new traditions.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And hey, I'm going to give a little shout out to one of our community partners, Tantera Farms, because first of all, Valerie and I made our, monthly pilgrimage there this past weekend and, blew the bank, but that's okay because they have some of the most amazing balsamics. That was what we were really low on, but they have these wonderful olive oils as well. But I was thinking of your roasted Brussels sprouts and how they have all these wonderful, wonderful, flavorful, for example, one that I can think of, there's several, but one that comes to mind that would be great with those Brussels sprouts is they have this fig infused Brussels sprout, fig infused balsamic that would be great on those Brussels sprouts.
Oh my gosh. I wonder if they're open today.
I know, that's what I'm thinking. Add that to my list.
Because we're always eating Brussels sprouts. Well, and another of our community partners, speaking of adding to the festivities, and this is something we'll have with our pizza and Spring Branch kombucha. If you're looking for a festive beverage and you want to add something to your meal, that's just a nice little alternative to have at the table if somebody doesn't want wine or if somebody can't have alcohol or cider or whatever. Kombucha is a really good festive drink, and it's really good for you.
I love that, Pamela, because it's kind of fizzy, so it does. You can even put it in your wine glass or something and really make it fancy and special. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah.
So Valerie and I, this isn't exactly Thanksgiving, but it relates. So Val and I were at this wine tasting some time ago, a local wine tasting, and sitting we're not wine aficionados at all. We were just going for fun. But Valerie and I were sitting at a table with some folks who really were aficionados, and we were talking about the sugar content in wines, and a lot of folks are really worried about that. And there are actually a few brands or companies that collectively bring together different labels that are marketed as lower sugar, even to the point that if you were interested in a ketogenic diet and you had some of this wine, it wouldn't actually throw you out of ketosis. So Kaylee was telling me this morning she was over at the local Price Cutter, and I've seen this at Mama Jean's, another one of our community partners. It's called Fit Vine wine. So it's a lower sugar wine. And we were asking our friends at this wine tasting, they said, some of that may be a little marketing, but in general, the drier the wine, the lower the sugar content. So, for example, like your, your Cabernet... No, Sauvignon Blanc. Sorry, I had to think about it. Sauvignon Blanc of the whites would be, and a dry cab too, certainly in the reds, would all have pretty low sugar content.
Makes sense.
But if you're looking for something that's being specifically labeled and marketed that way, and you can be a little more confident that you're not going to ramp up your blood sugar, then maybe check out that Fit Vine. I'll have to get some feedback from Kaylee. I know there's a company called Dry Farm Wines that will actually ship them to your door, and many of my friends in the Mindshare group are part of that. Dry Farm Wines, but I've tried it quite a few times. I haven't taken the deep dive to actually have that delivered to my door because, quite frankly, if you're going to have 6 bottles of wine delivered to you on a frequent basis, you have to drink them. So we don't drink quite that much wine. But we enjoy wine every once in a while, so that's just an idea, man. Low sugar wine. So go for the dry wines. Yeah.
Right.
And anything else we should add
Just
to
one,
our holiday?
well, just one more tip for the holidays.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend that you're not skipping meals because we definitely want to have protein throughout the day, not kind of load up at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And the other recommendation that I have for generally just kind of meal pattern eating is that I don't love grazing. Excuse me, because grazing kind of keeps your insulin high all the time, and so you kind of are in storage mode for a longer period of time. So even having pie like right after you eat, that'll help to curb the portions of pie, and then having a period where you have some fasting time, some time where you're like allowing your pancreas to kind of rest for a little bit. And I really like 4 to 5 hours between meals instead of sort of this grazing pattern. I think there are a lot of our clients and patients that I work with, that's kind of what they're doing wrong. They're eating lots of the right food, but they seem to never have a meal and they're sort of grazing just all the time. And for whatever reason, they're not able to meet their nutrition goals. So that's just a thought too.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's more like Thanksgiving dinner lunch is like noon, 1 o'clock.
Right.
Take the afternoon off.
Yes.
Go outside, go for a walk, watch some football, whatever.
Yes.
And then if you want to come back for dinner, well, then you can come back for dinner.
I think you got it, Pamela, because I think a lot of people don't do that. They have all that appetizer food and the crackers and the cheese and the dips and things all sitting out all day, and people are just sort of nibbling on that all day, and that's, I think, where people get in more trouble than anything. So those are my 2 cents.
That reminds me, I read a paper some time ago that talked about people who are at risk for developing diabetes. Maybe they're in that, higher hemoglobin A1C group where you're somewhere between about 5.7 and 6.3, 6.4. They were insulin resistant. And what they found is that if they'd simply walked for 15 minutes after every meal, 15 minutes, that the likelihood of transforming from pre-diabetes to diabetes was significantly less. So just walking for 15 minutes.
The research that I've read, Dr. Levine does a lot of this research, and he said it's about a 50% reduction in post-meal, postprandial
Love it.
glucose with a
Love
walk.
it.
Just a short walk, 20 minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So there you go.
All right.
And I have to say one other thing. We did talk about this before we got on the air, but there was a little paper about cocoa flavanols.
Chocolate.
That, in the journal Nature today, found that those who partake in cocoa flavanols, even who were essentially healthy young adults, improve their cognitive functions. You want to improve your brain, you want to improve your memory, hey, indulge in a little dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate.
It's medicinal.
It's
the doctor
medicinal.
said so.
Yes. You have permission. So you've just heard, right? These are the guys that keep me eating right and exercising, and I'm telling you to drink wine and eat chocolate. So
Yes.
I'm a mess.
No.
No.
It's mental health.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I love
Well,
Good.
happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Yes.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Pamela.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Dr. Charlene.
it. Great to see y'all.
Thanks.
Have a
Enjoy
wonderful,
your
safe